Hey, everybody, it's Brett, and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Stack, where today I am sitting down with the hilarious Paul Rudnick to discuss his new book, What is Wrong with You? A little bit about Paul. His most recent novel is the acclaimed Farrell Covington and the Limits of Style. His plays have been produced on and off Broadway, and they include Jeffrey, I Hate Hamlet, Regrets Only, and The New Century. He is the author of 8 books, and he's a frequent contributor to The New Yorker. His writing has appeared in Vogue, Esquire, Vanity Fair, and more. His screenplays include Addams Family Values, Coastal Elites, In and Out, Sister Act, and the film adaptation of Jeffrey. So, enjoy this episode of Behind the Stack. I am so happy and thrilled to be sitting down today with Paul Rudnick, whose new book, What is Wrong with You? It's Paul, it's so good. It is so funny. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much.
Before we launch into the book, I had a couple things I wanted to ask you about you that I kind of discovered, but also some of our viewers or listeners may not know about you. So I know you were born in Piscataway, New Jersey. Were you an only child?
Nope, I have an older brother, Evan, who's great, who also grew up in New Jersey, and he once did try to convince me he was twins, which I believed for several days. He would do this by running around the house and reappearing and claiming he was now his twin. I was only 18 at the time. No, I totally was. I don't know why I was that gullible. But at one moment, I might have believed I had 2 brothers, but there was only one.
How much older is he?
About 2-3 years.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's so sweet. All right. So then, yeah. Now, did you always know you wanted to be a writer?
I did, which was odd because I remember my mother had a composition from when I was like in 3rd grade, I think, when I said that I wanted to write plays, and I had never seen a play. I just liked the sound of the occupation. So and it took a while for it to settle into the various forms it took. But yeah, I just was always drawn to it and thought, yeah, that also, it just seemed like the dream job because you make your own hours. It's all imagination run rampant. And I loved a job where it was constantly surprising, where it wasn't the same routine every day, which is scary because it's a challenge. It means, oh my God, you're always at the edge of the cliff. But yeah, it was always the goal.
So you went to Yale, and what was your major then?
I was a drama major, which confused people because there's the illustrious Yale School of Drama, which is a graduate program, totally different. And anytime there were about 4 undergraduate drama majors. So it was a little bit sad that it let me totally invent my own curriculum. But I did get to take courses sometimes in the drama school and met all sorts of wonderful people, like when the playwright Wendy Wasserstein and Sigourney Weaver and Meryl Streep had just left. And one of my dear friends is a brilliant costume designer named William Ivy Long. So I got to have it. What was so amazing was to meet people who meant it, who were going into the arts as a career. And that seemed very daunting and worrisome to my parents at times, and to me. But it was a great environment to begin in.
So then tell me about that, the transition. What was your first paid writing thing?
Actually, the very first, but early on, I was hired. This was back in the day when magazines were everywhere. I was hired to attend the auction of the Joan Crawford estate, which was a very special journalistic responsibility. And what I loved was one of the items being auctioned was a dusty plastic bag full of her used false eyelashes. And there was a security guard who could not stop laughing, who had to hold up this plastic bag, and people were bidding on it. And I remember there was a little girl who was using the auction as a publicity opportunity. She was in one of the many revivals of Annie at this point and thought it would be good for her to be photographed next to like Joan Crawford's wastebasket and Joan Crawford's Pepsi styrofoam cooler. So it was fascinating. And I remember the guy who won the eyelashes had his own house cleaning service because I was fascinated as to okay, what are you going to do with them? Are you going to wear them? Are you going to create a little shrine?
Yeah.
But he just, revered Joan, as did we all. So that was for a magazine I think called New Times, which quickly went out of business. And for a while, anytime I wrote for a publication, it would fold. So I was the angel of death. But that was probably the first time I was actually paid, which was a milestone where I thought, okay, I can technically, on my pathetic tax return, call myself a writer.
I'm thinking about the two things again, like where the eyelashes ended up, and if this man passed them down to somebody, and then also I want to know where that little girl ended up, the actress who was standing next to all the pictures. I wanted you to button it and say she was Sarah Jessica Parker or something to that effect, but
No, no.
I wonder where she ended up.
Well, although there was, and in a real sort of old timey show business moment, when we were having auditions for Adam's Family Values for the sequel, which I wrote, and there was the role of a sort of snarky, full of herself little girl. And there was a young, very young, like 12-year-old actress who pretty much had the role. But then we had a very nice, incredibly talented little girl who was reading with the other candidates.
Mm.
But so the 12-year-old who was very confident and very assured and came in wearing like a little 40s dress and little high-heeled shoes, and it was a very LA moment. Every time she read a joke she liked, she would look at me and wink. And I thought, you poor thing, you don't know. Winking at the screenwriter will get you nowhere, especially winking at the gay screenwriter.
Right.
And the thing was, the other little girl was so good, the one who was just hired for the day as the reader, that we gave her the part. So it showed that you never know how things will
Yeah.
turn out. So you should always hope for the best. And both little girls have grown up to be genuine actresses, so it all ended well. But it was, but yeah, it's a tricky business.
Yeah, no, it is. Your career, you're so incredibly prolific. Between all of your books, all of your plays, all of your screenplays, you've done television as well. There's really, you've hit every kind of medium. Is there one thing you enjoy more than others?
I would say, especially right now, books are it for me, are sort of ground zero.
Mm.
I'd written books earlier, but I hadn't quite wrapped my brain around them. I felt like, no, this was not what it should be. And then it was during the pandemic, actually, when I started writing my last novel, Farrell Covington and the Limits of Style, when it just sort of erupted. And I really just sort of held on for dear life. And I thought, okay, either this is really good or I'm completely deluded. But it was so exciting. And I felt that I was finally able to talk about any number of subjects that I'd approached before in the other mediums, but never fully expressed. And it was so exciting for me. And the same thing happened on the new book on What Is Wrong with You, because it felt not effortless, but it felt exactly right. It was like, no, these are the characters I want to talk about. These are the themes. I didn't predict anything. I didn't outline anything. It just was there. And that's what writers dream of. So, and everything, yeah, it really, that's where I feel most confident, and as if I'm really delivering to the reader. And while I loved working in theater, working in movies elsewhere, and I never say no to anything, it's clearly, but what a good thing my mom's dead. But it's yeah, I find there's a richness there. Also, there's a selfish an element of control that when
That's
you
what I was
write a
going to,
book,
yeah.
your every character, your every scene, you also there's a little less anxiety. When I would write screenplays, there was a moment in one of the Adams movies where I'd written in the script, Gomez and Morticia enter a decaying French restaurant. And then a few months later, I went to a soundstage in LA, and there was an entire decaying French restaurant that had cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was glorious. But I thought, oh my God, couldn't we have used this money to send some kids to college? And in
Yes.
writing a book, you could first of all fully create that decaying French restaurant and populate it and manipulate it, and you don't feel that you're, adding to the national debt. But
Yeah. Yeah.
that's just a sidebar. It just I just feel like, okay, everything else I've been working on up till this point in my life and my career has kind of led to this. There's a fullness that, okay, this is something I can deliver now. So yeah,
Wow.
so right now it's books all the way for me. Here's
Is
one now.
there Oh my God, I know. I'm telling you, is there, and we're going to get into it in 1 second, but is there a character that you most identify with of what you've written so far, or is the closest to you?
Oh, I find that, and it's part of what actually, again, is so exciting about writing novels is everybody. That when you, because I thought
Mm,
it's, you need to bring each character, not so they become identical to your own personality or goals, but that
yeah,
you feel you know exactly where they're coming from. And even if they make horrible choices or evil ones, you have complete empathy for them, which is something I know actors go through as well. You never know you're playing the villain. You see the world from their point of view. And so, yeah, so what I was, especially in What Is Wrong with You, it's got a very large sort of cast. It's got a big range of personalities, which was part of the excitement for me.
mm,
There are gay characters in it as well, which are a little closer to my own experience, but they're straight guys, straight women, everybody, and it was so much fun to assemble that group. So yeah, there's never any, there's, I think, a certain tone and a kind of voice that's always mine, that's familiar, that I hope readers can enjoy. But but I love becoming everyone else. Also, it's one of the things that I learned very early on that, when I tried writing autobiographically, I wasn't that interesting. Most people aren't. Well, even most writers aren't. It's like, yeah, there are some people who've been through such trauma or such accomplishment, but yeah, I want to hear exactly your life story. I am not one of those people. What I love is exploring every other life, about not saying, let's just be in my apartment for 500 pages. That seems a bit limited. So yeah, I like going everywhere.
oh, I love that. Okay, so for our listeners and our viewers, do you have an elevator pitch for What Is Wrong with You?
What is wrong with you? Well, I can tell you, it began when I read this random blog post by a stranger that was the most depressing thing I'd ever read. He was at some tipping point in his life where he just hated everything he was doing. He hated his lack of a relationship, and it was just heartbreaking. And on the other hand, you thought, what would bring a person to share this on top of everything else? It just sort of was a little spark. The book ended up having nothing to do with him, but I thought, okay, how could I justify any form of optimism for that person? And especially in terms of his love life. The book is
Mm,
a real exploration of every form of romance, couples, widows, divorces, gay, straight, you name it. So that it was to take a look at, I think we live in a very jaded and justifiably cynical age. And I thought, no, okay, how do you make romance believable in any
mm,
kind? How do you let the reader not feel like a sap for going there, for believing in at least the possibility of love? So I guess that's kind of the heart, literally, of the book is about the possibility of love with a big question mark after that. Um, and beyond that, I really wanted to do kind of a social gathering to create a party for these characters where they all end up at a destination wedding on a billionaire's private island off the coast of Maine. And they're such a varied group that it's so unlikely they'd ever collide. And that's what was exciting for me. And I hope fun for the reader is saying, okay, I find when it all comes together, I get where these people overlap and what they might have in common. So that's the extended elevator pitch. Um, and the title just came from the fact that it's something that a shocking amount of people, including my partner, say to me all the time. Where you just stare at them and say, what is wrong with you? I don't think it is a high compliment, but it's really useful. And I find when I first was asking people, should this be the title, they all loved saying it out loud. So I thought, oh, good, that's a good sign. But yeah, so it's kind of about what's wrong with all of us. It's just, there are so many times in anyone's life where there are no good choices. So you just, make the leap.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because I was saying the title out loud, and depending on how, if you put the emphasis on the wrong syllable, it could really change the whole meaning of it. It can be earnest, it could, what's wrong with you? But no, I think that it's definitely more of the what the
Exactly.
yes,
Exactly.
yes,
That's it.
which I love that so much. Now, for characters, who did you start with? Or was there one person that you were like, let's start with these, and then was it Rob? Like Rob is to
Yeah.
me, Rob is kind of the central person in the
Yeah, he
book.
is. That is who it started with Rob, whose very beloved partner died a year earlier, and he's trying to figure out how and if he can go on. And that was, yeah, I thought that's it's really rich turf, especially if you're a comic writer, because I thought I didn't want to in any way underplay the trauma and the tragedy he was experiencing. But on the other hand, he's a very smart guy with a great sense of humor, and I wanted to see how he digs himself out of this particular hole. And he's very quickly fired. He gets everything thrown at him, and it's kind of the trigger for the book where and I also wanted the book to, and this is a form of love in a way, to explore friendship. And in this case, it's between a
I
straight
am.
guy, his trainer, Sean, and who's been a TV superhero, and Rob, who's an editor in downtown New York. And it's a lasting friendship for many, many years, and in a way, the core of the book. And I thought I hadn't really seen that often. Well, actually, it's in Shrinking. That's another example of that
Yeah.
sort of friendship and how real it can be. So yeah, it's very central to the story. But yeah, Rob was where it began because I thought, let's take the guy in the most trouble, and he certainly is.
I think it's interesting between this and Farrell Covington because both with that, although it has all of your trademark wit and humor, there was a somberness and a very serious element to it as
Oh
well.
yeah,
That and part of it is about loss again, this loss of a partner, which is in this as well, but you kind of toe the line very well between it's never maudlin, it's never indulgent, it's just this is what happened and this is how I move forward or attempt to move forward. And I really appreciated that because it's very real, but it doesn't wallow in anything, and he doesn't wallow in it, which I kind of loved.
no, that's exactly what I was aiming for. Because also that's life as we know it. That it's life does not divide itself into the comic and the tragic. Both are
Right.
being hurled at you every second of your day. And if right, that's why sometimes when I'll read things or see things that are unbelievably somber and only somber, I can even enjoy them and I can appreciate the skill at work. But I always think this feels walled off in a way. I thought it's not that humor is an escape or a cheat. It's if you don't include it, it feels like you're not giving a complete portrait. So it's always odd when and all the it's like meeting someone who's that gloomy, and you go, really? Every second.
Right. Right.
Some of my favorite people born through no fault of their own without a sense of humor. And so when
Yeah.
you make a joke, you realize they thought you meant it.
Yes. Yes.
Like, how do you cross the street? How do you navigate life when you don't are unaware of the comic? And I don't blame them because I don't think they did it deliberately.
Yeah, no, I don't. And those poor people. Are you a visual writer? And by that I mean, can you visualize these characters as you're writing them? I'm thinking specifically of Steve. I mean, he's so hilarious, and your description of him is so great. And I kept thinking, I wonder if you had this particular vision of this man in your head, this action hero, this kind of. He's like a sweet lunk to me.
Yeah.
He really is the kind of guy who's not threatened by anyone's like the sexuality thing. He'd actually probably be thrilled if a bunch of gay guys were into him because it's just it's what's expected because it's just him.
Oh yeah, no, and it fine. Well, there were people. I know a lot of guys like that, especially in Manhattan, where there are these incredibly confident straight guys who are
Yeah.
great with women, with gay guys, with everybody. Because and that's part of why they like living in a city because they welcome the variety. It's not seen as anything to be feared, and they're kind of delightful. Also, because if you go to the gym in New York, there are straight guys who love having a fan club, whether it's, single women on the next machine or all the gay guys going, "You're really gay, aren't you?" But
Right. And hoping desperately they're going to be the one to turn them.
oh, exactly. Well, that's a universal fact, which I kind of love
Yes.
about because you must have noticed whenever there's a new handsome young male movie star, the people who will claim that person is gay are you gay men who somehow imagine they have a shot.
Right.
Straight
Right.
guys who want to eliminate the competition, and women, on the other hand, will totally deny anyone is ever gay because they want to believe that they will someday marry that person. And
That's right.
they think, well, is he 100% gay? Maybe he was just having a gay day.
Right.
So
It
I
was
love
experimental. It was college.
exactly. And everybody makes their own rules, as you could tell from, what they were wearing, who they're married to, whatever people say. Well, he's married, he's got 2 kids. You go, only two? So,
Right.
but Sean in the book is he's one of my favorite characters ever, just because he is so appealing, and he shouldn't be. He sometimes says terrible things. He's completely uncensored. And he's got a real sort of gregarious quality. He loves helping other people and seeing how they behave, which is very useful in a personal trainer in any profession where you're dealing with other human beings at their most vulnerable all day long. He's like a shrink or a doctor, so he was just so much fun to write because I didn't have to worry. Which is another goal with this book, was to say, okay, let's let these people be completely, unfettered, politically just
Unfiltered.
and let it rip. And Sean is certainly the leader of that particular movement. But yeah, he was
Yeah.
really right.
Well, and first of all, I love that Linda, who is his ex-wife at the start of the book. She's so fantastic too, but she's almost his kryptonite because she initially is not charmed. She's charmed by it. She certainly,
What he's wearing.
yes, where she understands his appeal, but she's so smart, and she also probably thinks about limitations to a certain degree. But something that you just said, which I loved so much about this book, is, and I'm sure it's a generational thing. I feel like I'll be canceled, but it's because of the kind of these characters are a little bit older. They're from a little bit of a different time, so it's not as much about they're aware of the political correctness of everything. At the same time, they are who they are, which is why for me, like, you introduce this character of Isabel, who is Rob's boss, who's brought in, young millennial, who is such the representative of everything that, well, it's basically everything that the right is fighting against right now, but she is woke culture to the nth degree. I literally went downstairs and read the entire passage of the description of Isabel to my husband, because I was like, you have to hear this, because it was so spot on. Go everything about how she went to school and how she approaches life, and you have like captured the zeitgeist in that character right there. That character, I mean, it is so. Talk about her for a second. She's so funny.
Oh, she was sort of delicious to write because, yes, she's that weird point at which the far right and the far left intersect because they're both watchdogs and they're both
Yeah.
deeply invested in canceling people. And
Yes.
this is true at most publishing houses. They will now hire people, sometimes the entire staff, to go through every manuscript word by word for any possible offense or any possible inauthenticity, which is a good way of handicapping every writer on the planet. And there have been books that I know that I was just reading about another one where when people have released, early galleys of the book and people mm-hmm. online and bring up such fervent objections that the book is withdrawn or canceled altogether. And I think that's very dangerous. But what fascinated me about Isabel was her overwhelming confidence that she was right about everything. Yes. And I think it's something that happens with all of us when we're very young and when we have that sense of, no. Every older person especially is misguided. They will never understand this. I will be doing them a favor by getting them off the face of the earth. And all that. And she's not hateful in that way. I think of her as somebody who's, again, in her early 20s and has been catered to a little too much, has never heard the word no, and just feels that her word is law, which is the most dangerous way of behaving anywhere on the political spectrum. And she and Rob, because I know people who have, especially in the arts, who've had to deal with this sudden new wave of, um, persnickety political correctness, where nope, that's not funny, take that out, that sort of thing. And you could see with stand-up comics, oh my God, they're right and left. But it's interesting. But I think there's been a certain pushback and a certain sense of no, come on, there's no danger in hearing just about anything. So you're allowed to disagree. You're allowed to aggressively disagree. You're allowed to speak out. You're allowed, God knows, to post on every platform, but you're not allowed to erase. You cannot say
Right.
this book should not, or movie or play should not exist. That seems like true fascism. So Isabel was kind of, it's one of the joys of being a writer is you get to create someone like that who's in certain senses just monstrous, and then you can redeem her, and you can also have fun with her because she's one of those people she's very suspicious of humor. She thinks it's a way of sneaking, un, inauthentic opinions into a manuscript. So it kind of makes her an open wound in a way because she's just so easy to sort of criticize. So I hope the book presents a kind of rounded picture of her. But yeah, she's something new on the scene. It's great to write a younger character, especially because I think generational differences are always fascinating and entertaining because you see it's where the title comes from. On both sides of the divide, people going, "What is wrong with you?" and "I don't get it," and "How did you turn into this?" and "Why won't you listen to me?" And everybody at any age is capable of that attitude.
No, I see it every evening at the dinner table with my children.
A lot of kids, they're not young adults that age, are becoming, and I don't mean politically conservative, although there's some of that, but they're becoming incredibly responsible. I mean, fiscally responsible, motivated.
Yeah.
And I think they were, some of this may have come from growing up during the pandemic and time of great upheaval. They're very aware of issues of safety and the future, and it's very admirable and a little sad at times because you think, oh my God, you're 22. Why are you so focused on 50 years from now in your IRA? But on the other hand, you think, God, these people are so much more responsible than anyone I knew at that age.
Yeah, I always think a large part of it is just because they have like a 24-hour access to a computer in their pocket, and for which and listen, we can get on a whole other conversation about the ills of social media because I just think it's a disaster, and especially for young people, I think it's a huge disaster. But I think they're dealing with things that we all never had to deal with just because we didn't have access to so many things. We didn't have information coming at us like this, which is why I think there's such rises in anxiety and all of these things is because they trying to filter this information and figure out, listen, like we're all in it right now of figuring out what's the 4-alarm fire and what is actually just noise. And then I wonder sometimes, is it just getting old? Is it just getting older? And this is just the natural progression of things? Is new generation to come up and tell the rest of us it's time for you to retire and go out to a field somewhere? I don't know. Maybe.
Exactly. Although one of the things I love is, and that I sort of went into it in this book, is when you meet someone's parents or their spouse, and you're completely smitten with them. You think they're hilarious. You think they're outrageous, all that. And then you have to remember, okay, but what if you were married to them? What if that was your father? You would cut your throat. But so it's something actually, show business is kind of based on that. The whole notion of stardom are people who fascinate us and people who have incredible powers of seduction and allure and are also wildly toxic. But but I love those kind of people where you go, okay, I love you, but you have to go home now. So
that could be the title of your next book.
I love the book. That's a very good title. But it also sounds like something that would end with, a serial killer. Um, it's, yeah, no, it is generational. Well, although I will say, in defense of social media, both as a writer, oh my God, does it make research much easier? When you guys just
Yeah.
have, the touch of a whatever the stroke of a keyboard, you know what the date was. And the other
Yes.
thing that makes me sort of grateful for social media is actually when we're living in a time of cancellation and censorship, especially any books with gay content, black content,
Yeah.
all the stuff that the right does not want us to read. I always think, wait, in a certain sense, that horse is way light years out of the barn because any kid can have access to any book if they've got a phone. That
Yes.
makes me feel a little better about the world because I think, yeah, you can't eliminate entire um, sections of human experience as easily as you could 50, 100 years ago. That the internet does make people feel a little less alone in a certain way. So, yes, it can produce enormous anxiety and suicidal ideation and everything else. But I think there is still a communal sense that can be helpful.
Oh, I agree with that. And I do think the internet, like anything, is all predicated on the user, right? So
Yeah.
if your intention, whatever your intention is, whether it's good or bad, you will get that experience out of it. And I know, it's funny because even to be sitting with you here today only stems from the fact that I kind of found this corner of the internet that was all books, which is my favorite thing because I'm a nerd and I love reading and I love writers so much. And so, that, and I love that there are all these like-minded people who are, and I even look at, I'm not a TikTok person, but what TikTok has done for the publishing industry and how that's
Oh,
driving
yeah.
sales, all of that kind of stuff. So there are, obviously there are positives, and those are the things we have to embrace. I feel like for these young people now, we have to kind of teach them the methods in order to how to filter some of the other noise out to kind of keep them safe, I guess. This all comes down to, this is interesting because this all comes back to tech. And one of your characters in this book is this tech billionaire, Trone Meston, who is, I kept thinking, okay, now, which billionaire tech person was he thinking of when he wrote this guy? But he's much more compassionate. I mean, he's much more Melissa
Oh,
Gates than, I mean,
100%.
yes,
Although every bit is insane and odd.
yes. Yes. So he ends up like so he is kind of the catalyst, not the catalyst, but he's the center of this big wedding that everyone's going to. And Linda, who is the ex-wife of Sean, is going to be marrying him. Of course, immediately was like, well, it's Apple because of all the tech and all the phones and all of that kind of stuff. Who was he for you? Anyone in particular, or just kind of amalgam of all these different?
More to all those guys, the Mark Zuckerbergs, the Steve Jobs, the uh, who's the other guy? I was thinking Peter Thiel,
Bezos.
less, but and Elon certainly. But these guys who have undeniably, whatever you think of them, created something very brand new in the world and marketed it and profited from it. But there's also a weird blankness to a lot of them. And it's not just
Mm,
that they're all nerds who dropped out of school, although most of them are, but there is that certain weird incel, dead-eyed thing to them. And I thought, on the other hand, they are at the complete center of our culture right now. They are the guys we look to and who fascinate us. And you think, okay, first of all, what's it like to have that many billions of dollars? What's it like to command that sort of empire, to have that many sheer employees, to have that many people waiting for your next product launch? And when I go into the Apple store, I'm kind of thrilled, that
yeah.
I like that stuff. And so it's new. And with that interested me endlessly. And to create a character like that who was that far from almost anyone's experience because they are so powerful and so strange and can indulge both the best and the worst of their personalities. That they are
Yeah.
when everyone around you is works for you and is being paid by you and says yes to you constantly, that seems very dangerous and into a way to create the strangest sort of army. But but at the same time, I thought, no, if I don't write about that, I'm leaving out this enormous chunk of the culture. So Trone Meston is somebody. He's genuinely self-made in that odd way where you think he invented himself, including his name, from the ground up. And he sort of has friends and family, but always at a remove. I mean, these guys are always one-man bands ultimately.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of their followers, though, the people who need the latest iteration of the iPhone every 3 months and who are very
Yes.
willing to throw things
Yes.
out. Because I'm like the last adapter. I'm the person who's like saying, well, what's this newfangled, BlackBerry thing going
Right.
on? So
I need a new charger.
exactly. Um, oh my God. The fact that the mouse on my new Apple desktop recharges itself and you don't have to put in batteries, I
Yeah.
tried to
Yeah.
do it
Yeah.
all. I just thought, okay, this is like Alexander Graham Bell. This is like the biggest
I
advance
know.
in technology ever because I don't have to buy batteries. And I thought,
Yeah.
first of all, it's something they should have done much earlier, but it's also, it feels very beneficent whenever a tech person does something that actually helps you, that makes things easier.
Yes.
It's sort of like when I was reading about AI, and they say now all the people who spent all those years learning how to code their skills may be obsolete because coding always sort of awed and terrified me because I thought, no, no, no. Even if I was born yesterday, I would never know how to do that. And now the idea that those people, so that anyone can do AI, so it's not just it's a brave new world every 30 seconds. So it's yeah. So that and Trone is the white hot center of that kind of tech. Also, I imagine it must be scary in a way because it's sort of like being a movie director where everyone's waiting for your next big thing.
Yeah.
And the way I'm not saying it's good that Steve Jobs died young, but on the other hand, it was a good way out of having that kind of pressure on him. More
I'm
than
peaked. I'm out.
exactly, or like, oh, okay, this version of the desktop is going to be pink. It's
Yes.
you think when was the last really new thing? What thing will change all our lives? And that's what Trone is after. And he's also really after trying to control and codify love, which is anyone who's created a dating app, anyone who's created um, a survey that an algorithm that will somehow connect people. That seems both tempting. What if you could meet the person of your dreams who might happen to live, 3 continents away with the,
Mm.
in less than a second. But it also seems highly unlikely. But that's what Trone is after, and it's certainly. I thought, okay, that's a conceivable next horizon for the tech world and for a Google.
100%. I mean, we're talking about it now, and I'm thinking 5 years from now, when I'm going to call you up to say, did you see the latest that's coming out of this, love band or something to that effect?
Oh, completely.
I love it'll be called.
Yep. Well, no. Also,
Yeah.
it's why when all the platforms that go at it that are now being retired, and all the from the olden days from Friendster um and MySpace and everything, and you think that stuff was literally 3 days ago, and now it just feels like a horse's carriage. That it's fascinating the speed of tech. And it's as a writer and just as a human, it's exciting because I think, oh, okay, I'm so glad I lived through both the olden days, where once in a while I think, okay, what would have happened? I also think this in both a novel and whenever you write a play or a movie, there always used to be the need for a telephone on stage so that the maid could pick it up in the opening moments of the play and say, well, the master isn't home quite yet. We're all waiting for the train from Larchmont. All of that stuff, and fill you in on all this exposition. And you don't have to do that anymore, and that everybody can look at their phone and know
Yeah.
what the other person just found out. So it's very handy. It's also changes the rules of creating a plot and characters. So, and it's also fun to reflect is even though I know some writers eliminate all tech, especially from novels, because they think, oh, it'll all be outdated in 2 seconds. But I took the other root of, okay, if you invent your own tech, if you create a whole fictional world and a guy who's at the head of a fictional empire, that way it doesn't date because it's all invented, and it's just speculative.
Yeah.
So it's and yeah, it just seems too juicy to neglect.
No, he's great. And again, like with all these characters, he's written with empathy, and he comes across that way too, to make him what we kind of identify now with all of these tech bros. Again, in our current culture is quite a different thing. I want to veer completely off the book for 1 second and just ask you, I know you have a penchant for junk food, and sweets. What are your go-tos? I'm a big sweet person.
Well, if I turned the screen just a few inches, you would see a plastic bin full of milk chocolate nonpareils, which
Wow.
I know, they're sort of like my Adderall, because they're just there all day long, and I have that idiot concept that they're little. How could that be, fattening or in any way bad for you, or that, or a total sugar bomb? But I mean, I have a Hall of Fame, which is pretty much begins with Malamars, because they
Wow.
combine every food group: milk chocolate, marshmallow, and vanilla wafer. There's nothing I don't like about a Malamar. But I'm pretty, as long as it's crap, I'm happy. I saw someone eating Fig Newtons the other day, and I just had to rip them to shreds. Like, that's not a cookie. That's a vegetable.
No, it's not. Yes.
Exactly. Don't get that out of my
Wait,
face. Don't pretend you're having dessert.
well, since we're talking about it, so literally what's on our desk at the moment?
No, that I would. That's also, that should say on the top, served one. It's like when you buy a family size.
That's exactly right.
Not my family. That's for me. But no, those donuts
Yes.
and donut gems, and when all the sort of crap manufacturers began to create tinier versions of their
Yeah.
product, mini Oreos,
Yeah.
mini Teddy
Yeah.
Grahams, donut gems. Entenmann is my Steve Jobs.
I know, and I feel like they've fallen off, at least here on the West Coast. Like, I lived in college in my first year in New York off the Entenmann's Raspberry Danish Twist, which they don't even make anymore. And I literally used to take slices of it, slather it with butter, and stick it in the microwave because you could then, because it was just butter, and he weighed 12 pounds, and who cares? But Entenmann's also, they would do a chocolate cake with a marshmallow frosting, and that's another one that's gone.
Oh yeah,
But that
no,
was
you can
so.
get that.
You can still get that?
Oh yeah, in New York you
Oh,
can.
see, okay. So when I'm next to New York, I have to look for it because I haven't been able to. I mean, because those things are like, that's it to me.
The only person who ever sort of defeated me, and out of the best intentions, I had a wonderful agent years ago who knew about my sweet tooth, although every organ in my body is sweet that way. But I love Sara Lee chocolate brownies, which you can still get.
Yep.
They're not as basic as they once were, but it was brownies with chocolate frosting, and they were and it looked like a steak. It came in a tinfoil
I remember that.
and a rectangle, and you just wanted to stick a fork in it and put the whole thing in your mouth. But she once invited me for dinner, and she had a tray of Sara Lee brownies, which she had then added another layer of canned frosting to. And then on top of that, another layer of rainbow sprinkles. These are all things that I worship. But it became like looking at a tree after you've chopped it down, all the layers, or in the Grand Canyon when you could go back to the Jurassic period. And it actually made me ill. And I felt terrible saying that to her because she put such effort into it and only wanted to please me. But I thought, no, that's the line I don't cross, but individually, I will eat all of that. I will eat canned frosting out of the jar with my finger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
know. Anyone who cannot open a jar and immediately create a smile face on the top of it is not a human being, as far as I'm concerned. And that happens with peanut butter too. But no, I was very proud of myself. Recently, I never liked Reese's peanut butter cups, and now I do. And I feel
interesting.
oddly healthy, even though they're not. But it was I felt I was really having a life change. It was my
Are you buying the crunchy ones with a little bit of chopped peanuts in it? Maybe that's it. So it feels a little bit more. hearty.
You are lucky I'm not in the same room because I would slap you right now. Crunchy peanut butter is bad peanut butter. Crunchy peanut butter is peanut butter with gravel in it. It is not smooth. Now, I've never liked I thought, ew, that's a step backwards in human evolution. It's supposed to be creamy and smooth. So no, I do not like. It's also like when they. Oh, I noticed at Carvel the other day. This is really getting creepy, but I love Carvel. That they, there's a Biscoff cookies. They're really good.
Yeah,
I don't
I'm
know
not
what
into
they're,
Biscoff.
but they made a new Carvel line of cones and little dishes where they crumble up Biscoff cookies and then roll the ice cream in it. And I thought, I like all the ingredients, but don't do that. That feels like an ice cream cone that's been run over. You know,
Yeah,
I
it's been
don't like
dropped on the ground.
crumble crunchy thing. So I have rules.
Right. There are standards. There are standards, Paul.
That must be observed. But that's what I have found when people who are aware of my dietary habits, they will instantly start sharing. It's like, no, no, no. There's a reason why Nabisco and Hershey and all the great companies are thriving.
Yeah, well, I imagine I would love to see if you throw a party, it's no one's bringing you wine. It's just various boxes and donuts and all different kinds of.
They do. I'm easy to shop for. Although there was a moment. This is a reach, but when on the second Addams Family movie, where the producer Scott Rudin and Barry Sonnenfeld, the wonderful director, went to Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch because he was going to write a song for the movie. It's a whole other story. But he made them wait 3 hours and then brought out a bowl of peanut M&Ms. And I thought, that's what Michael Jackson serves at Neverland. I'm totally on his side.
Now, have you ever had the M&Ms that are the peanut M&Ms, but not the actual peanut? It's like the peanut butter in the M&Ms. Have you had those?
No, that was sort of the Reese's thing where
It was a little bit
I'll get
Reese's.
there. I'll get there, but don't push me. You know, it was
Yeah, okay, it's a little slow.
yeah,
Yes, that's right. You've just got to the peanut butter cup. You might need a little. That's very close. So I get it.
exactly.
I
But
get
no,
it.
it gives me a dream.
Yes, exactly. It's something to look forward to, and it's there, and until the next
Yeah, I
incarnation.
might guess that someone will hand me one and it will kill me.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, this was so wonderful. You're so delightful. And the book, please, everyone,
Oh,
get the book. Buy independent if you can. But it's really, really, really terrific. You will laugh your ass off. I guarantee it. But thank you so much for being here today. This was just terrific.
oh, thank you. No, I had such a good time. Thank you so much.